Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June session of the Impact Advantage. And Matt Lee will not be on the call with us today. He is out on assignment, and so it'll just be me. So let's kind of move on forward to this. This is Kelly Anderson, the president of Impact, and I don't take lightly the audience that we have today, and appreciate everybody registering and continuing to be a part of our webinar. And I want to take a moment to thank HireRight for their support of the Impact Advantage and letting their clients know about the webinar. And every month they've been a big support for us, and I appreciate that. And also Ramsey Media Works. And regrettably, Matt can't be here today to share his Ramsey Minute. So, but we'll have him again next month. Speaking of next month, we're going to have a presentation by Bob Perry on driver wellness, and he's got some interesting data related to that is hot off the press. And folks, when you look at some of the reasons we can't recruit drivers, some of the reasons, many of the reasons that drivers come to orientation and don't pass, and then also reasons that we have to let drivers go, it's related to driver wellness. So look forward to having you on next month's call with Bob Perry. The date of that is going to be July 18th. So July 18th, it's a Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the morning, will be our next Recruiting Insider call. So without further ado, let's go to the next screen. And we're talking about the law of priorities. And folks, this segment, or my thoughts wrapped around this, some of these talking points come from reading the book of 21 Irrefutable Traits of Leadership by Dr. Maxwell. Now, I'm going to tell you, by my standards, it's a long book. It's quite lengthy, but I tell you how I bit it up, or chewed it up. I decided I could read one trait of leadership every night, because it was like 10 to 15 pages per trait of leadership. And so there's 21 of them. I thought, shoot, I'll be done with it in a month. And so that's kind of how I chewed that book up. I recommend a lot of different books. One of my favorite is The Science of Personal Achievement, and I say a book, but I actually listen to that on audio. Then also Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is incredible. It's Your Ship is another phenomenal book. It's written by the captain of the USS Benefeld, and maybe later I'll talk more about that. But then also Norman Schwarzkopf's It Doesn't Take a Hero. So anyway, 21 Irrefutable Traits of Leadership is a phenomenal book. And this is just one of the sections in there, and that's the law of priorities. And, when I look, and I've talked, folks, about the fact that I do management coaching and leadership coaching. And when I look at a lot of managers, and frankly, I think I'll even use the word most in this situation, is most managers are in firefights incessantly. And I think as we just be honest with ourselves here, how much of our daily routine is reactionary and basically fighting fires. And so what happens is, instead of purposely being able to work toward completing a real goal, real projects that move our company forward, we spend all day long fighting fires that frankly don't move us forward at all. So, my first question is, are you stuck in reactionary priorities? Do you come into work every day and basically start looking for what's going on so you can jump in the middle of it and do something about it? If that's the case, we've got to change that paradigm, because I think you'll agree, it wears you out and it doesn't get you anywhere. It's not rewarding, and it doesn't get you or your company anywhere in the short or long run. So, just basically looking at the calls that you've got to return, emails that you've got to return, meetings that you have to be in. And I see people going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and these meeting warriors will have an 8.5 by 11 notepad, and they go to all these meetings, and they take all these notes, and they flip the page over and go to the next page, and to go to the next meeting, and then flip that page over and go to the next meeting. And in the end, they'll have 30, 40 pages flipped over with notes, and they're walking around with this thing. I guarantee you there's action items that were not taken, and we're not moved upon as a result of the fact that you're so busy in meetings that you don't have time to actually get anything accomplished. By the way, keep this in mind, and I've said this before, the number one reason that Fortune 50 companies go out of business in the United States is their executive vice presidents don't understand how their department contributes to the success of the company. And folks, if we don't understand how our department contributes to the success of the company, then how are we going to actually work toward the completion of any goal that's going to help with the success of the company? And we've got to ask ourselves as managers, what are we doing that we shouldn't be doing? What should we be doing that we're not doing? Because frankly, we're so busy working on the things that don't matter, we don't have time to work on the things that do matter. And, and talking about that, I think about, way back when I was at CFI as the manager of recruiting and retention and such, and there was this big spreadsheet that I had to do. And it tracked our turnover, it tracked our leads and all those things. And I'll just tell you, that thing took over 2 hours of my week, every week, working on that spreadsheet. So when you really think about it, if you have a 40-hour work week and that took 2 hours of it, 5% of my time was spent working on this spreadsheet. What was interesting is one day, and I bet it was actually more than that, but anyway, one day I decided to pass this spreadsheet, which I was very nervous about, pass it off to a person that I was grooming to take my place. And so I gave it to Pam Adams, and she started working the spreadsheet. She had a few questions initially. Was it a pain in the rear the first couple of times to get the spreadsheet done and answer her questions? It'd been faster for me just to do it myself. Absolutely. But you know what? By the third week, I didn't have to touch it anymore. The spreadsheet was given to me totally complete, totally right, totally ready to give on to the rest of the executive management team. And I had put 2 hours back into my work week. Now, another just recently happened again. Do we learn? Maybe. But just recently again, there's a major spreadsheet that I do for Impact, and it tracks all the revenue for all 4 divisions of Impact by month. And that was my baby. And I mean, if you screw this thing up, I won't know. I mean, we got QuickBooks and all that, but this is my look behind us and in front of us and recurring and everything. And if you mess this thing up, I'm going to be running blind. I just didn't want to give it up. But one day I finally thought, you know what am I doing? If she does mess up, let's say I give it to Shauna, and let's say she does mess it up. I've got the master on my computer, and we can go back to the master. Here's the other truth, and how many of you are doing this as well? You don't want to give the spreadsheet up, but the truth is you aren't keeping it up because you are so busy doing the other things that you're doing. You're getting documentation, you're getting things that are supposed to be entered into that spreadsheet, and you are 2 or 3 months behind on doing it because you don't have time. So here we are, we're afraid to give it up because somebody might mess it up, but the truth is we're not even getting it done in the first place. I'm just being honest with you guys. I fight the same fights you fight. And so anyway, I gave that to Shauna. And by the way, Shauna teaches and has taught Microsoft Office programs at the college level. She knows more about those programs than I know about those programs. So me sitting here thinking she's going to mess it up was frankly a false excuse for not empowering her to complete that spreadsheet. Folks, when I gave that to her, she not only kept it up to date, she actually made it better and added some additional pages to that spreadsheet. and that actually give us more information about where we are as a company on impact. And it is extremely exciting to see the data that's on there. So, you know, sometimes when we give it up, not only does it get kept up, but it also gets better. And you know what? It has freed me up to work on the things that do matter rather than the things that don't matter. So how do we set proper priorities? One of the first questions we have to ask is how do we define success? Now, folks, I won't go way into this. You know, last thing was March. I had it was called Recruiting Insider at that point, and we did a webinar entitled Purposefully Planning for Intentional Success. So if you weren't on that, check out the website and go back to last March and look at the one Purposefully Planning for Intentional Success. And I go in more in depth on this, but you know, I asked the question, how do you define success? And personally, how do you define success? And there's several areas in your life from a personal level that you need to be able to define what that is. Professionally, you know, in your career, how do you define success? And then, frankly, also in your department, how do you define success? You know, one thing, and I'm reminded of this story, where this COO of a major trucking company called me and says, Kelly, do you know any recruiting directors that are available? And also, should I let my recruiting director work out the 5 weeks notice that she's given? And I said, well, actually, I got two questions. One is how long has she been there? And 13 years. How many people in her department had she hired? Well, all of them. Okay, and she has not in the last 13 years groomed one person in her department to be able to take her place, wherein you have to hire from outside? And he says, absolutely. And I said, well, regarding the working the 5 weeks notice, I don't think she's going to rip you off and do you wrong. But you've overpaid for the last 13 years. Whether you want to overpay for the next 13 or 5 weeks is your choice. You know, folks, that's one of our priorities is in our department is how do we start building the people that are in our department to actually replace us? It's kind of an oxymoron, wherein if you're expendable, if you're replaceable, then you're not replaceable. or you're not promotable unless you're replaceable. I see many people that try to hold other people down, try to keep all the power and decisions around them, so they spend all day long making decisions for people that frankly ought to be able to make decisions for themselves, working on the stuff that doesn't matter, and then frankly they just don't have any time to work on the stuff that does matter. So once you have identified how you define success in your personal life and in your professional life and in your department, you know, and in your department, we're talking about how does the company define success? How does your department define success to support the company? And how does each person contribute to that success? Once they know that, then we can work out the steps to get there. And as the title of last March's webinar said, now we can purposefully plan for intentional success. Every project you get into, you ought to be asking, and every meeting that you get into, how do we define success from this meeting? So that we're not getting into a conversation that or starting on a project that we don't know where we're going. You know, the other day I was involved in a conversation for a very short period of time, and these people were complaining about this person and what they had done and the demands they'd made and all this. And frankly, it was unreasonable. It wasn't taking this group where they wanted to go. And they were just kind of dwelling on that. And I finally asked them, I said, hey, is talking about this situation helping with your personal, professional, or departmental or company or, you know, corporate goals? And the answer is no. I mean, this person was a waste of your time when you started your interaction with them, and they were wasting time while you was doing interaction with them, and now they're wasting your time while you're talking about a situation that's not helping you move forward. Folks, we've got to be very purposeful and jealous with our time. So, basically I ended the conversation. Folks, let's move. Let's learn what we can learn from the situation, but let's move on, because this is wasting our time. And as a result of the time we've spent talking about this, we haven't been able to spend time on the things that really matter. So, what gives you your greatest return on investment? Dr. Maxwell says in the 21 Irrefutable Traits of Leadership, he says, 20% of your customers give you 80% of your return. If you have 10 employees, 2 of them give you the best return on your time and your money. So he says, spend your time not on the 80%, on the other 80, but spend your time on those 2 people that give you the biggest return on your investment. Am I saying not to spend any time on the others? No. But I'm telling you, he's saying for the best return on your investment, spend your time on the people that give you the best return on your investment. We're going to spend some coaching time with others, and if they don't come along and they got the wrong person, got the right person in the wrong job, then make an adjustment. But be thinking about, what am I working on? What am I trying to accomplish? And does this conversation, does this meeting, does me spending time on this report, this letter, this call, this email, do these things, are they helping me, or am I spending my time on things that don't matter? And the other thing I will say, this is kind of a side note, this is a struggle that we have as office people, and I especially see it in new office people. I call it the popcorn syndrome. And they'll sit down to start working on something, and 2 seconds later they jump up out of their desk and they walk across the office for something. And then they come back to their desk and they sit down for a couple of seconds, and then they jump back up and got to go to get a drink of water. Come back and sit down. Oh, shoot, I need to go back and use the restroom. But then sit down. Oh, I got to go talk to this person. You know what I'm talking about? They're just popcorn. Up and down, up and down. One thing I found is I'm going to sit down at my desk and start working, and as I finish projects, I'm going to stack them. Those things that I could go file somewhere else in the department, or conversations that I need to have, I start stacking that up on the corner of my desk, so that when I get a pile of that going, then I make my round, and I hit the file cabinet, I hit the printer, I hit 2 or 3 offices where I need to drop things off or say something, and then I come back to my office and continue with moving forward on other projects. Every time we get up and move around, we are losing productivity. The other is we are not only popcorn from jumping up and down, but popcorn, or what I'm talking about here, is bouncing between projects. We decide, oh, I need to work on this. Let's say, if you could see my camera, I have this little 4x5 size yellow notepad, and that's where I have my projects, my to-dos for today written down. And because these are my short-term projects, these are like what I want to get done today. And I've decided the thing I need to work on is this first, and then I need to work on this next thing, and then the next thing. But what happens is we start working on this one thing, and it starts taking a little bit of time, and then we start beating ourselves up because we're not working on those other things. And so we bounce over and do that. Or we hear email, we bounce over and do that real quick and come back to this project. And then the phone rings. Of course, now guys, we're in trucking. So we've got to, when we're not influenced by outside forces, then we're going to continue to focus on this. But a driver walks in, we got to handle it. The phone call comes in, we've got to handle that phone call. But when we're not influenced by outside force, don't beat yourself up and don't bounce. You've decided that the most important thing to work on right this minute is this. So sit there, focus on it, and get it done, and then move to the next piece. I can tell you, just another side note related to that, how many people bounce because they're whacked out on caffeine. They've had too much sugar, too much caffeine, and they're having too hard of a time to focus because they're all jittery. You need to maybe take inventory on yourself on that as well. What gives you the greatest return on your investment of time and money and resources, and focus on those items. The other is schedule time for your priorities. I mean, there are things that we have to do. Some of the things that I've talked about are things that we have to work on as department heads. Things are going to happen. We've got to talk to them. But if we're just stuck in reaction mode all the time, and on these short-term priorities, we never really work toward organizational development. There's a difference between working in your department and working on your department. And guys, don't miss that point. It took me years to figure that one out, especially as it related to me at Impact. Because when I was asked that question, Kelly, are you working in your company or on your company? Well, I said, well, I am the company. I do all of it. And then later, it was those times, I figured out that it was those times that you really strategize. What's going on in the industry? What's going on with the labor force? What are the latest, greatest sources for finding drivers? What are some ways that we can reduce turnover that are non-reactionary? And I just got a question. It says, is retain your drivers a good value proposition for safety tech companies to tell potential customers? For safety tech, I'm trying to think where you're going with that, Steve. A good value proposition for safety tech companies to tell potential customers. I think that, and I don't know if this is going to answer your question or not, Steve. I'd like to talk with you offline maybe about that. One reason drivers leave companies is because the tech they use is too invasive. Oh, I got you. You're talking about drive cams looking at the drivers. The number one reason that drivers come into the transportation industry is for freedom. But we have had, and folks, when I started driving truck, there was a lot of freedom. You did a check call in the morning, and you didn't do another check call until the next day. And of course, now, one of the first things that happens, we got Big Brother, and so we got the satellite communications. And we saw drivers running away from satellite. But once they finally figured out, man alive, I get off the phone and start driving truck because I'm not having to deal with sitting on the phone waiting for somebody to answer all the time. They finally got used to that. I think that has to do with people being willing to adapt to change. Secondly, then you got well, now we have ELDs, and I think about the drive cams, and I think about the telematics that we have. We can tell if the driver's speeding the second he does it, or hard brakes the second he does it. We need to explain to the drivers that these things are there for their benefit, not as an overlord. I think about Steelman Transportation, who had a driver roll a truck, and the driver said, "Hey, I was just driving down the road and a wind hit me and blew me over." Now, folks, does that sound plausible? You're just driving down the road up there between Kansas City and Joplin, Missouri on I-49, and all at once a wind hits you and blow you over. Well, if they hadn't had drive cam, that driver would have been fired. But there he is on drive cam, easing on down the highway, and all at once you just see him sitting in his lane. Oh shoot, what in the world? Boom. A straight line wind came along and blew that truck over. Part of selling drivers on the safety equipment is what's the benefit of it. We have an e-learning division of Impact, and we see drivers that don't want to take their e-learning. Well, once you explain to them the benefit of it and why it's important for their career, they're more willing to do it. They won't do it because they have to. They will do it because they want to. So I think when it comes to customers and insurance companies, painting a picture of your entire safety program, because what are customers interested in? They're interested in their products being hauled by professional people in a safe and compliant manner. And of course, we want it done at a competitive rate as well. But folks, I'm way on a different subject we could have a seminar on, but if you win by price, you lose by price. What we want to win by is service. And if you win by service, you can charge for a premium service. We all pay more for service than we do for other products that we can get cheaper. But we pay more for this other service because they give us what we want every time and consistently. So, hey, how do we schedule time for priorities? You schedule specific time to work on your priorities. So thinking about working on your department and on your career. Are you spending 30 minutes a day studying in your field? You know, keeping up on management, leadership, and industry events, learning better ways to communicate with others? Are you purposely spending time doing that? Maybe your drive to work is a time when you can play an audio book that will help you grow intellectually and professionally. Employee development, you know, scheduling specific time to spend with your team. You know, I've got to schedule a seminar with my own team. I need to schedule a whole bunch of seminars with my own team, and the only way that's going to happen is if I literally go and schedule time for that and put it on the calendar. As long as I wait until I have time, it's never going to happen. Once I realize it is a priority, the professional development of my folks is a priority, then we pull up the calendar and we put a date on it, and lo and behold, guess what? All at once we have time for it, and we make it happen. Otherwise, it's just something we keep thinking we need to do, and a year and 2 years later, we still haven't done it. You know, schedule time for department goals. You know, many folks have not figured out how they're going to define success. And they're like, well, wait a minute, so what should we measure? I mean, how do I define success? And so we got to figure that out first. So then how do we measure it? Then how do we communicate it? What do we have each person do? Hey, that's going to take a little bit of time. But once you do that, now you have a department working with a purpose. Your job gets a whole lot easier. And by the way, if you're one of those people that people are coming to you, don't miss this point. We're late in the webinar, but don't miss this point. If you're one of these people that all day, every day, people are coming to you with questions. What do you think? What should I do? What's happening? What? And all you're doing all day long is answering questions. Stop. Tell your folks, don't bring me questions. Bring me 3 possible solutions. And what you will find is within 2 weeks, they don't bring you questions anymore. They'll say, well, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I think I ought to do. Within a month, and I mean a month on the outside, all they will tell you about it, hey, listen, I think you needed to know that this was going on. This is what we did. Folks, how much more time would be put back in your day where you can work on your department and work on your purposely planned successes if you weren't interrupted all day, every day with questions that, frankly, they could answer if you just empower them. You know, schedule specific time for projects. And here's the most important thing, schedule due dates. If you don't put due dates on things, they will always be something that one of these days maybe I'll do. I want to tell you a quick story. I recently hired Colonel Jeff Staha, Air Force Special Operations Commander. When I met Jeff, I was in high school. 16 years old, and he's Air Force Special Operations. I need to call him. I saw something recently that said Special Tactics. So maybe it's not Special Ops, it's Special Tax, but they are our Special Operators. And back when I was in high school, Jeff told me, he says, Kelly, if anybody's joining our Special Tactics Division and they're joining us in order to blow stuff up and shoot at bad guys, they are joining the wrong team. Our job as Special Operators is to have dinner next to you and you not know I stole food off your plate. You know, and when I was in high school, Jeff and his team jumped into Grenada 2 weeks before the invasion of the island of Grenada. And they were there, and I mean, right under the enemy's nose the entire time, setting up the LZ, setting up the attack plan, you know, for the forces that were going to come in there and free those students. And they had no idea that they were there. Well, fast forward to several years ago, Jeff and his team jumped in on top of and I ought not call him Jeff, I ought to call him Colonel Staha, but 38 years, and jumped in on a special op. he was on the roof as a major or colonel at that point. I think lieutenant colonel maybe typically doesn't do those types of operations, but there were some special things going on that that precipitated the fact that he needed to go there. And so 10 of him and 10 of his, or 9 of his other guys, they jump on the roof of this house. They have teams that fast rope also, and set up a perimeter around this house. They blow a hole in the roof of the place, jump down into it, and they kill 10 bad guys that are making IEDs the size of propane trucks. 10 of the baddest IED manufacturing guys in all of Iraq. So I asked Colonel Stahl, I said, what happened? I said, it used to be that if you got Saul, then you messed up, and now you're actually the pointed tip of the spear jumping in and blowing stuff up and killing bad guys. And he said 911 happened. Folks, I wonder how many folks have not changed your mission to change with the times. As we sit here and think about companies that over the years have gone away because they did not change their mission. What's going on with IBM? You know, they didn't believe the PC was for real. They thought it was a fad. Green screen was the way it was supposed to be. What about Kmart? You know, what about Walmart actually? You know, they thought that Amazon was, no, it's about brick and mortar. It's not about online shopping. And Amazon is kicking their rear. So I ask you folks, we've got to work on our departments, work on our careers, have our heads up, working on them, not only in it, so that we can see the changing times and we can change our mission as it needs to be changed in order for us to be successful long term. And with that, folks, I actually went a couple of minutes over. I look like Colonel Stahl is actually our leadership coach. I've said I do management training and leadership training coaching, and Colonel Stahl is our leadership coach now, and it's very exciting. So maybe we'll have him on a call coming up in August or something. I think we'll do that. Anyway, in July we'll have Bob Perry talking about driver wellness on July 18th at 10 a.m. Folks, thank you so much for being on the call, and I will see you next time. Steve, feel free to give me a call if you want to continue that conversation at 417. Well, okay, if you get your pen, 437-3261. Otherwise, the numbers are on the website and everywhere else. Thank you. Bye-bye.